facial capture was done similar to the body, where we have reflective markers that we glued onto the face, and about 150 of them, and captured with multiple cameras all the way around him. So it's all very accurate data, but it's very limited in the space that you can capture in, and that's certainly difficult to do with multiple performers. So when we discussed Avatar with Jim, he didn't want to be limited by those problems. So his idea was that we would actually take a camera and just mount it on a head rig, and just record the actors' faces. And so we came up with the technology that we needed to do that, to basically derive what the motion and the muscle movements were of the human face from this single camera, and then be able to apply that to the Na'vi faces. And that's really the evolution of where we've been able to take it. So that's really on the capture side. On the animation side, we've gone from completely keyframing facial animation for Gollum to learning more about motion capture and using that to figure out what the muscles of the face are doing, which is what we did on King Kong, so you get an idea of the emotional state of the character and how to translate that. And that's really what we wanted to bring onto the Na'vi, the idea that we can figure out the emotions now because we can see from the faces what the emotions are, plus we can do the dialogue and put the two together to create a complete performance.
What would you say if you were to look at Letteri, and I look at some of the close-ups of the photography, and I'm thinking, you know, there's an elongated head and neck, and there's musculature, and there's ears, and all of that. Can you explain how much of that is coming from the human actor, and how much of that is some rig that you've developed for that character, and how that character uses that information?
Yeah, exactly. What comes from the human actor is for the body, the recording the movements. You understand how their joints are moving, essentially. We can kind of figure out what their skeleton is doing. What's coming from the face is essentially a detailed recording of their performance, and from that we can derive what the muscles in the face are doing. But then everything is pushed back through a couple of different rigs, actually, because, for example, for the skeleton, from the joint positions and from the dynamics, we have to figure out the tension in the muscles at any given moment to figure out how they're actually firing to move the body in that fashion. For the face, it's something similar. We try to derive which groups of muscles are activated for frame by frame and in what proportion, and use that to drive the Na'vi faces. So it's translated through these complex rigs that try to understand what the actual physiology is and the biomechanics of humans, and then we sort of modify that to apply it to the Na'vi.
And then you have to do the rendering.
Yes.
And that is animation, too?
Well, the rendering, we have another team that kind of deals with the rendering. There's actually a couple of teams. One is you have to get all the basic coloration of the characters and everything else. Now, a lot of that is done by hand painting, but again, we have a couple of techniques we've used for scanning various bits of human data, human skin, that we can use as a starting point for the Na'vi skin. We have to figure out how to turn it blue, but still keep it feeling warm and fleshy, because that's important for the subtlety and to get, you know, the translucency of the skin. And then we have to figure out how to light everything, because we wanted to treat the actors and the environment the same, as if it were a live action film. If you brought an actor out into the jungle and just started shooting, you'd have all this light bouncing around naturally. Well, that's really difficult to capture. So we spent a long time figuring out exactly how do you capture that, because we wanted that same behavior. We wanted to just walk them out, you know, into any location or into any set and say, this is the light all around you. How does it look? It's good. Let's face this way. Let's bring in a few lights over here. We tried to do it as much like live action filmmaking as possible. So that meant really understanding the physicality of how light works and how it interacts with the skin, how it interacts with the eyes, because the eyes just gather all the light all around them. And that was really important to figure out how to do that and to get the light in the eyes reading properly.